I am your host, Naeem bin Mohammad Rafi, and it's my YouTube channel, Jazeerah Universal. Those who think that at the present moment, all that chaos, all that, warmongering everywhere in every piece of the earth planet, there is a couple of mad people. One of them is Donald Trump, and someone just put up on the Twitter what he did in his first term and in such a detail. Somehow, I think Elon Musk or the Twitter, they have made that disappear. That was a complete postmortem of all what he has done and his family, and how this man is a madman and should not have been on a seat. It's like giving a razor to a monkey, and he cuts his own throat. And this is what he has done to the United States. And we'll start with what he has done. You can see what he has done by his policies. You just take one by one, and each one of them has backfired and has blackened the face and destroyed the peace in the United States. The buying power of a common American, healthcare, even I think transportation, all that tariff war. This man is crazy. He has opened fronts like Hitler on 5, 6 different, with countries, with different states. And he is the most dishonest, the ugliest, and the liar. And I think there is nothing in adjective which could really describe this ugly person. And this is why the dirt, the filth loves the dirt and filth. The birds of same feather flock together. The another dirtiest man, which I think in history there is not a single cruel person you can trace up all the Prophet Adam, who will be as dirty, as filthy, as cruel as is, Netanyahu and his friends. And actually, the company he keeps, this is how the man is known. Ben Gaver, see, he is another dirtiest, filthiest midget, and they will all burn in hell. Even Smotrich, he will burn, and all those hawks, in there. And look back, I give you a brief history of these Jews, the how, the Russians asked that, look, dig up graves and put these, people in those graves. And those Russians, they refused. They said, no, this is not, they are alive, and we are not going to put all the Jews in that grave. Then the Germans and the Hitler, they stopped, and they said, okay, you set aside. And the same grave which was dug, they asked the Jews, now you put these people, because they refused to bury you alive. And they took a second to do this. So this is how dirty, how filthy, how abnormal, how cruel, how animal these been ever since the creation of this world. So if anyone now still wants to live with these people who are so dirty, who are so filthy, who are so cruel, have no respect for the law of your country, no respect for the international law, they should be expelled from every international body. And in fact, no one should even look at them. And I am not going as far as say to spit on the face. There may be few and apart, and as you know, there are people who really are followers of Torah and Sabur, the religious books, the divine books which were, relieved to Prophet Moses and David. They are very few. And it's not all this thing which I've said, is probably the exemption will be those just few which are far apart. Now, the similarities, you will see what all these things did to the Palestinians in that documentary, which is part of the documentary which I think Al Jazeera gave in such an extensive view, and I have used some parts of it, and I hope, God, that there will be nobody that ugly, that I think selfish, that they talk about nonsense about copyright protection. If he does, it is better that he now says that, so that I remove this thing for the information. And that's just like actually shutting your mouth or putting a little strip onto your lips so that you cannot do that. Unfortunate this is that, especially in media and the outlets like this is owned by Qatar, and for a Muslim country like that to shut up and not spread that the dirt and filth about this people, in which even Holy Quran mentions that do not make the Christians and the Jews friends. They will be friends to each other, and they'll never and ever be sincere to you. They're always and always hurt to you. And the present peace, I think, no, I shouldn't. This will be an insult to call it a peace agreement. It is some kind of a commercial deal between, Jared Kushner, his father-in-law, and, the Jewish Prime Minister, the cruelest, the war criminal, that to occupy or somewhere stall this thing so that the people become insensitive and they get in fatigue syndrome and they do it. And I'm going to show you the similarity, what they did to the American Indians when they came. Then you know that how these birds of same feather. So you can't destroy the snake or kill the snake unless you kill his master who feeds him the milk, and that is the United States of America. I am sorry to say this thing, but I think the time has come for Putin, if they really, the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians or any other, country like North Koreans or anybody who hates, and especially I think the Japanese should come forward, the Germans should come forward, because it's the Japanese cities where the Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which they dropped the first nuclear bomb on this ever since the existence of this world. So if you want to label anybody, the terrorists, the top terrorists of this world on this universe ever since its creation are two. There is the Americans, and there is the, obviously before the Americans, because all these whites, they came from either England or they came from Ireland. There was no other such thing that they would have come from. All those others were colonies of the Britain, like Australia, like New Zealand, and all these things, So that's where this scum of the society came from, and they must be eliminated. If the world wants to live in peace, the billions of peoples, then you must get rid of these 250, those, and nearly about 10 millions here. So the total is less than 300 million people, and if the scum of this 300 million people is finished and is broken, then I think the world can live in peace. There won't be a unipolar world anymore. And let this be like before, a global village, and then have, if you're living on this world, it's a short time you live, everybody's mortal, is supposed to die, then at least die in peace. And look at these similarities, and I think recognize the enemy around you, and every one of you should have a picture of these two countries and these two leaders, especially, Netanyahu, his friends, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, along with his wife, along with the Jared Kushner, along with, Donald Trump. And I think these and all their helpers and associates who are facilitating this thing, they are all criminals, and they are helping these genocide, the killing, the starvation and everything. Their name will go in history, and they must be all punished and hanged and given the maximum punishment on earth, so that it becomes a deterrent for all the other human beings to come, and they let the other people live in peace.
Greater Syria was a major region of the Middle East at the turn of the 20th century. It became part of the Ottoman Empire in 1516 and remained Ottoman until the end of the First World War in 1918. Greater Syria's southern province, Palestine, was an active part of the Ottoman world. Trade boomed in its commercial centers, which included Jerusalem, Jaffa, and Haifa.
فلسطين كان فيها شعب نشيط، فعال، منتج، مفكر، مبدع.
But the First World War changed everything. In November 1918, the Allied powers of Britain, France, Italy, and Japan defeated the Central Powers of Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and importantly, the Ottoman Empire. Britain and France conspired to divide Greater Syria to their best advantage. But they could not agree on the future of Palestine, So in 1920, the League of Nations put it under interim British control or mandate. Some Christian and Zionist Jewish writers describe Palestine as, quote, a land without a people. Active political movement developed. During the Ottoman era, Palestine had representatives in the Chamber of Deputies, the lower house of the Ottoman Parliament. But at the start of the British Mandate, the Palestinian national movement began to take shape in Jerusalem. It called for the independence of Palestine. The first Arab-Palestinian Congress was organized by local Muslim and Christian groups in 1919. Its 30 attendees denounced the British Mandate and called for their different groups to unify under one association. 100 years ago, Palestine was a very different place compared with today. It was under British control or mandate, and there were those who suggested it was just an empty land. But in fact, cities like Jerusalem had an established commercial sector, transport networks, and an emerging cultural life. They began to attract Arab intellectuals, writers, and artists, and interest grew in developing new media like cinema and filmmaking. People were also getting interested in sport and hosting international events and competitions. The municipality of Jaffa discussed a plan to host an Arab Olympic event, while Palestinian athletes won international championships.
It was a society in transition. It was the period of globalization that had led in the last quarter of the 19th century to a degree of development, certainly in the cities, Jaffa, Haifa, and to some extent Jerusalem.
Jerusalem was becoming an important commercial center, as were the ports of Gaza and Jaffa. They combined to turn Palestine into a trading hub with Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. These old trading records in the Jerusalem archives are evidence of its business activity. Jerusalem exported soap to Egypt, Italy, and Greece through Gaza, grain to Egypt, Rhodes, and Dubrovnik through Jaffa, cotton to France and Izmir, and antiques and religious gifts to Istanbul, Italy, Portugal, and Spain. Gaza and Jaffa also imported rice and fabrics from Egypt, textiles from Istanbul, glassware from China, shawls from India, and lead from France and the Netherlands in Europe. Through trade, Palestinian cities kept pace with development in the rest of the world in the late 19th century. Palestine also developed a transport infrastructure and built a railway network to connect Jerusalem and other towns and cities with the ports on the Mediterranean. Archives are evidence of its business activity. Jerusalem exported soap to Egypt, Italy, and Greece through Gaza, grain to Egypt, Rhodes, and Dubrovnik through Jaffa, cotton to France and Izmir, and antiques and religious gifts to Istanbul, Italy, Portugal, and Spain. Gaza and Jaffa also imported rice and fabrics from Egypt, textiles from Istanbul, glassware from China, shawls from India, and lead from France and the Netherlands in Europe. Through trade, Palestinian cities kept pace with development in the rest of the world in the late 19th century. Palestine also developed a transport infrastructure and built a railway network to connect Jerusalem and other towns and cities with the ports on the Mediterranean. The opening of Jerusalem's main train station was a landmark event in this part of the Ottoman world.
In Palestine, but it was rapidly overtaken by Haifa, which in 1905 achieved a very important step forward with the arrival of a branch of the Hejaz railway that was from Damascus to Der'a in southern Syria, and it was extended to Haifa. So after that, you could travel by railway from Haifa to Damascus and to Medina in modern-day Saudi Arabia. And the significance of that was it linked up maritime routes in an age of European colonial expansion and industrial expansion to overland routes, and that was later used to connect to places as far away as Kirkuk in northern Iraq, which is obviously an oil producer to the wider world.
عمليا هذا الربط ساهم في تطور مدينة حيفا اقتصاديا، لأنه صار في عنا حركة تجارية قوية جدا بين التصدير والاستيراد. أصبح في عنا علاقة قوية جدا تربط القارات الثلاث بهذه المدينة، أفريقيا، آسيا وأوروبا. الأمر اللي أنا بدي أشدد عليه بهذه النقطة تحديدا هي عملية تنشيط الحركة التجارية الداخلية، يعني من مناطق مثلا من حوران، من لبنان، من شرق الأردن باتجاه مدينة حيفا عبر الخط الحديدي الحجازي، وهذا بالتالي زاد من عدد السكان. زيادة عدد السكان بتتطلب زيادة خدمات ومؤسسات سواء كانت اقتصادية أو ثقافية أو اجتماعية.
Ottoman reforms encouraged the growth of European interest, certainly capital and trade and communications. And that, of course, led to growth.
Became known for their manufacturing sectors. Each developed its own specialties. Nablus was associated with manufacturing a well-known brand of soap, Hebron with leather products, and Akka within the Mandate. Members of the Zionist movement, including the British politician Herbert Samuel, attended the San Remo Conference, and the Balfour Declaration was incorporated into the British Mandate. But the British also had a dual obligation to govern and conduct policy in Palestine on behalf of both Jews and Arabs. In reality, however, the San Remo Conference tipped the balance significantly one way.
That was a hugely important landmark for the Zionist movement. So by 1920, when the San Remo Conference was held, of course, that was also celebrated as an important victory on the basis of the Balfour Declaration promise, and also because the Zionists were working hard to ensure that the terms of the Balfour Declaration would be incorporated into the terms of the mandate itself. So that was a hugely important moment, and to be compared only with the UN decision in 1947 to partition Palestine into Jewish and Arab states.
But any decisions taken by these congresses were increasingly overshadowed by a growing phenomenon in the 1920s and 30s: immigration. The Zionist movement had grown up in Europe in the late 19th century, lobbying for a homeland for the Jewish people. The pressure it put on the British government led to a major announcement in November 1917. The Balfour Declaration was named after the British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour. It was a letter he sent to a leader of the British Jewish community which said that
His Majesty's government view with favour the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavours to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which shall prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine.
the eventual impact of the Balfour Declaration was to encourage European Jews to immigrate to Palestine. But that impetus had not really built up by 1920. Published in the press, the surviving records shed light on the tense relationship between Samuel and Palestinian leaders, as well as his attempts to persuade them to share land with Jewish immigrants.
I see a group of Jews in your country who can help you construct your land and teach you the economics in a good, harmless way.
Our country has enough qualified and willing people to properly invest in our land and elevate our state's affairs without the intervention of the Jews.
But if the Jews came to your country, they'd build the unplanted lands, which are an excess to your people's needs.
There are no unplanted lands in our country, except for some small areas that are unfit for agriculture. We will definitely have to plant and invest in them in the future because our people reproduce in big numbers, thank God.
Each one of us has an average of 7 children. We must prepare lands for them.
We have heard that you are one of the founding Zionist leaders.
I'm not one of the Zionists.
We know that you're one of the key Zionist leaders. You've organized their finances. Now that you've seen our situation and heard our wishes, you must have realized that our land doesn't fit other people and that we won't let the Zionists in as long as we live.
European Jews wanted to go to America or to Western Europe. In 1925, more Jews went to Palestine than to America because of restrictions on Jewish immigration. So, for example, by 1935, which was the peak of Jewish immigration during the Mandate, immigration reached 65,000 in just 1 year.
What's more, the British Mandate allowed Jewish immigrants to become Palestinian citizens.
Palestinians were never consulted about these things, and again, it's to do with the overall strategy promoting the idea of a Jewish national home in Palestine from 1920 onwards. It was formalized in the Mandate, which came into force in 1923, and it granted Palestinian citizenship to Jewish immigrants, absolutely.
In December 1947, the British announced that their mandate for Palestine would end 5 months later. This led to increased violence by armed Zionist Jewish groups. On the 14th of May 1948, the day before the mandate ended, the head of the Jewish agency, David Ben-Gurion, proclaimed the establishment of the State of Israel. The new state incorporated 78% of mandatory Palestine. Over 700,000 Palestinians were forced from their homes and became refugees in neighboring countries.
In 1941, the Germans forced us to dig a long, deep trench. And after we did what they wanted, they brought a group of Jews and threw them into the trench. And the Germans ordered us to bury them alive. We firmly, these are the Russian prisoners, we firmly rejected this disgusting act. the Germans ordered us to take the Jews out from the trench, and they threw us into the trench instead of the Jews. And they ordered the Jews to bury us alive. We were shocked when the Jews began to bury us without hesitation. The Jews almost covered us when the Germans stopped them and pulled us out, and we were surprised by the German commander who shouted at us, "We wanted to show you, to prove to you who the Jews are. They are ungrateful, merciless."
The Mossad perfected the art of blackmailing people. They've also perfected the art of industrial electronic espionage. Everybody snoops, but the Israelis actually are running the electronic systems for the U.S. government. But what I have found in the United States is that all of our politicians are groomed. You don't get to be president unless you're bought and paid for. Now, I've also learned that CIA, FBI, and NSA have been spying on and blackmailing all of our politicians. Veterans understand that war is for bankers, war is waste, and we should not be going to war in America. We need to close all 1,000 of our bases overseas and bring our troops home. One element of the deep state I didn't mention before was the secret intelligence community. Those are the people who are smuggling guns, gold, drugs, cash, and small children as part of the totality of the deep state shadow government enterprise.
The problem is not Netanyahu. The problem is the whole of Israeli society. If you look at the polls, about 70 to 75% in polls say there are no innocents in Gaza. No innocents.
There's nothing but children.
Yeah. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, they kill children as a hobby. As a hobby.
Yeah, I've seen some videos of like how proud they are when they kill a child, and it's really...
It's a Jewish supremacist state. Because for the people of Israel, Gazans are vermin. They're garbage. They're human refuse. Every few years, they report, Netanyahu's going. Netanyahu's finished. No, he's not. And you know why? Because he's an obnoxious, narcissistic, Jewish supremacist. And that's Israeli society. Obnoxious, narcissistic, Jewish supremacist. When they see him, they see themselves. So there may be quarrels on this policy issue and that policy issue, but at the end of the day, they keep voting for him. And they vote for him because Netanyahu is not just the face of, he's the reality of Israeli society.
Did you know Christopher Columbus was a monster, not a hero? When the Ottoman Empire defeated the Byzantine Empire, the traditional land route to India was cut off for Europe. India was a treasure of textiles, spices, and other valuable materials, making access to it highly desirable. In search of new trade routes to Asia, European explorers sought alternatives to the long journey around Africa. One such explorer was Christopher Columbus, who famously suggested heading west to reach India. In 1492, Columbus embarked on a daring voyage, but instead of reaching India, he landed on the shores of the Bahamas. Mistakenly believing he had reached the Indian subcontinent, Columbus encountered native people, whom he referred to as Indians. However, when he discovered that the natives wore gold ornaments, he became fixated on the idea of finding gold. In Next Voyage, with a fleet of dozens of ships and 1,000 men, Columbus implemented harsh measures, as noted by the Spanish writer Bartolomé de las Casas.
We are the real Americans, the original people of this land, and this is the story of how we perished on the hands of Europeans and how they took our lands. The story of the United States of America, never told before, from our perspective. They came with flames in their eyes, with ships that cut the horizon like blades. In their hearts, no mercy. In their minds, no thought of peace. They came with a hunger that devoured the sun, and a thirst that no river could quench. They stepped onto our shores, as if the earth itself was theirs by birthright.
They spoke in tongues we did not know, but their hands spoke clearly. Hands that took without asking. Hands that took what they did not plant. Hands that killed without hesitation. They came with immoral thoughts, to seize the land, to break the spirit, to annihilate everyone they set their eyes on. And they did. Over 3 generations, they drove us to extinction. Not just the body, but the name, the language, the song.
They poisoned our streams with their greed and got rid of everyone in their way. Each season, whites moved the lines of our world back until there was nowhere left to go. I am Nematanu, Powhatan's warrior. The English came in wooden beasts, bringing disease and famine's feast. They settled Jamestown on stolen ground, claimed our villages without a sound. Starved and beaten, we tried to live, but they took more than they would give. They slaughtered 60 in one breath, a cruel shadow whispering death. Our land seized, our freedom torn, a people's heart forever mourned.
I was not a princess in your painted story. I was a daughter of the river, child of Powhatan's people. Born under the whisper of cedar leaves, my feet in the earth that knew me by name, Amonute, but you know me as by a different name. I was taken from my river, my hair cut by strange hands, my tongue taught to betray itself, fed me prayers I did not know, and married me into a cage of foreign words. I was not a princess in your painted story. I was a daughter of the river, child of Powhatan's people. They call me converted. I call myself stolen. I am not the girl you painted. I am Pocahontas, and my truth is not your story.
I am Opechancanough, warrior bold, who fought the whites as our lands they stole. 3 wars long, with blood we bled, defending earth our fathers tread. Thousands died beneath invaders' guns, yet still our fight was never done. My name is Sasakas, Pequot chief. Faced fire and fury. 700 lost in smoke and flame, their name erased, but not their claim. The English marched with bloodied hands to claim our lives, our sacred lands. They rang their bells and fired their guns, declaring freedom from the crown of England. Their freedom was our desolation. They tore down one empire only to build another, with our lands as its foundation stones, with our blood as its mortar. No freedom came for the Indian, only wrath and pain and the long shadow of extinction. They burned our villages, broke our treaties before the ink was dry. Their revolution was not for all, only for themselves. I am Little Turtle, fighting invaders fueled by lust. For 10 long years, we pushed them back. They believed their muskets and steel made them untouchable. But on that day, they belonged to us. Battle roared like thunder. We moved swift as lightning. Arrows flew, muskets cracked, the air filled with the screams of men who thought no Indian could bring them down. They would try to hide this victory, call it a massacre, erase it from their books. But our stories are stronger than their lies. Tecumseh, the Shawnee chief, I roar, against the settlers who came to war. They burned our villages, poisoned our streams, but never shattered our dreams. I am Crazy Horse. We met the whites, our heads unbowed. At Little Bighorn, we struck a blow. 300 soldiers laid low. But victory's taste was bittersweet, for years of war would not defeat. I am Red Cloud, Lakota's might, fought for treaty, fought for right. We forced the whites to change their game. For 2 long years we held the land, a rare victory by our hand.
Ghost Dance danced, hope aflame, but soldiers came with death to claim. 200 souls, young and old, cut down in winter's deadly cold.
Wounded knee, a silence loud, a people's sorrow wrapped in shroud.
They gave us poison blankets, cold gifts in the dead of winter, stitched with the breath of sickness. Smallpox carried like a whisper of death. They spread the pandemic of their hate, Not only in our bodies, but in the soil they stole. They removed us from our lands, as if our roots could be pulled from the earth without tearing the heart of the world.
This was their biological warfare, crafted not in the name of battle, but in the quiet cruelty of conquest. An inhumane war waged against my people.
Mothers went first, their arms empty where an offspring once slept. Their roots followed, their laughter silenced before it could grow. The old died last, carrying the stories no one would hear again.
They took us on the longest journey, across rivers that froze beneath our feet, through hills that tore our breath away, across lands that had once known our names. Each step was a mile of grief, each mile a grave dug in silence. And still they pushed us forward, believing that if our bodies fell, our spirit would remain behind, broken, forgotten, erased. But the spirit of the Indian does not die on the trail. It walks beside us still. You can hear the footsteps of those who never came home.
They said it was God's will, a holy calling, and they claimed to spread west. But the only thing they spread was their wickedness, their hate, their chains. In the name of destiny, they bound men and women in shackles, slaves to build the wealth of others, while we, the first people, stood in their way, the obstacle to their selfish glory. They murdered our leaders and called it progress, but I call it what it was: tyranny dressed in the language of freedom. They boast they built this country on the backs of slaves, but the truth is darker. They built it on the corpses of the Indians, on the broken bones buried beneath every city, beneath every rail, beneath every road they claim as their own. My heroes drew the bow, pulled the trigger, and sent cowboys to the dust, for the cowboy was not a hero to us. Today they dress their ancestors in gentle words, calling them settlers and pioneers. But the truth wears a different face.
They do not dare teach this to their children. They do not dare print it in their history book.
They prefer to tell a softer lie, that it was God's will, that they were his chosen people. But the only God they truly worshipped was the green paper they could fold in their pockets.
They say they took from the Indian because there were no laws. But what are laws if not moral code?
Biblical passages, the 10 Commandments they claim to believe, they broke every one.
They stole. They murdered. They coveted. They bore false witness against us. They dishonored their own God while pretending to act in his name.
यूनिवर्सल टेलीविजन को सब्सक्राइब करना ना भूलें। उसके बाद बेल बटन पे क्लिक करें और अपने कमेंट्स के सेक्शन में अपने कीमती जो ख्यालात का इजहार ज़रूर